Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's conversation, the Caribbean Data Opportunity. I'm Shree Neve from ClicData, and I'll be hosting today's discussion. One idea I often come back to is make your decisions drive your data and AI strategy, and not the other way around. That is especially relevant today. Organizations around the world are moving quickly towards data analytics and AI, but different regions are starting from very different place. The real question is not simply how quickly can we adopt AI, but what decisions are we trying to improve? So I'm very pleased to be joined by Meckala, founder of Datanomi, a Jamaican-based consultancy providing data operations and business intelligence support to the Caribbean organization. Meckala has more than 7 years of experience working across different stages of the data lifecycle. Her work focuses on practical data challenges, including broken processes, manual reporting, scattered information, data readiness, governance, and scalable reporting. Meckala, thank you for joining me today. To begin, could you briefly introduce yourself, tell us about your journey into data and analytics, and share a little bit about Datanomi and the work you're doing?
Thanks for having me, Shree. I am happy to be here today. I think I want to start off by giving you an overview of Datanomi and what we do. So, we are a data and business intelligence solutions provider. That means that in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean, we help organizations to improve how they understand, use, and govern data. Some of those organizations are building their foundations, others are integrating business intelligence into their operations. And regardless of the stage that they're in their data journey, what we do is support them with readiness for things like automation, analytics, AI, and of course, digital transformation as a whole. Now, regarding me, my background is in marketing, management studies, and data analytics. And the majority of my career has been spent in the media intelligence field. And I've also worked on a lot of data analytics related projects. Now, throughout that time, I came to appreciate that data is much more than numbers and texts that are compiled for reporting sake, just to present a report. And I also became aware of the fact that there's a wealth of data in organizations, but it's not necessarily being used in a meaningful way. And I think that shows up especially outside of fields where data is already built into the nature of their operations, like finance, for example. So Datanomy was founded to help address that gap across both the public and private sector. And that gap is really between having the data and using the data meaningfully.
Yeah, and you absolutely said the right thing. I think, Meckala, you had that. Thank you for that introduction. First of all, I clearly see you come from the business background and then the data side of things. So both
Right.
combining the business and the technical acumen together. And I agree that there's definitely a gap in what the market is seeing. It's not just about what data you have, but how you use it. And I'm glad Datanomi is actually helping organization fill that gap and really take them further. So, tell me a little bit more about the wider regional picture from your experience, since you've worked with a few different organizations. How would you describe the current state of data and analytics adoption across the Caribbean? Are the organizations just focused on reporting and dashboards? Are you seeing organization use data more strategically to support decision making? What's your thought on that?
I have a lot of thoughts. So there is a lot of activity. Of course, organizations are moving more systems, they are using more digital tools, yes, more dashboards, more platforms with analytical features, and now, of course, more AI enabled tools. Compared to, say, a decade ago, we're generating far more data, and there has been a shift. Years ago, organizations would have been asking the question, how do we get the data? But today, the question I'm hearing is, how do we consume that data in a meaningful way? And I think that is where a lot of the Caribbean is right now. If, for example, you watch development in technology, you'll see that regional governments and institutions, they're trying to find their footing with these emerging technologies. And some of them have already emerged, like AI. AI is here, it's not emerging. So the most visible one, of course, right now is AI. It's as an advanced form of analytics. And most teams are trying to understand where it fits into their organization, whether it's their reporting, their service delivery, or their wider transformation plans. And one thing I've realized is that there's still a lot of groundwork to be done before organizations are truly data ready, thus AI ready, because you have to be data ready before you're AI ready. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of foundational work to be done. And when I say foundation, I'm talking about all of that infrastructure that will allow them to turn the raw information into secure and actionable assets. I normally explain data foundations by mentioning the six core elements, which um, I've heard you speak about a lot, Shree. The
Yeah.
first that you mentioned just now is really data strategy. And this is where they spend time aligning their data initiatives with the business objectives. And this is usually the stage where they look at essential data sources and they prepare a roadmap for the transformation and that type of thing. The second stage is where the majority of our region's attention is on now. And that stage, as persons from the region who may be listening now may be familiar with, is data governance. Because if you look, you'll see that different policies are being developed, different rules are being created, especially in Jamaica for data
Mhm.
protection officers. There are different compliance frameworks that are being established, and all of that is to ensure data security and privacy. Then there is, of course, the storage architecture, and it has to do with utilizing the scalable repositories. Some organizations are using cloud data warehouses. I would say the majority are, or they're using data lakes or a hybrid of both just to centralize that data. And what I'm seeing to date is that this stage is normally part of conversations only when the organizations are looking to move away from legacy systems, which a lot of teams are trying to do now, especially in the financial industry. Now, data quality is a stage that unfortunately most organizations don't fully understand the importance of. But I think by the next year or so, we definitely will, because it's vital for trustworthy business insights and, of course, for AI model performance, especially for those teams that will be piloting AI internally. And data quality, as you know, it normally has to do with ensuring that the data is accurate, ensuring that it's complete, it's consistent, and of course, that it's timely across the systems. And then data integration is another foundational pillar. This is where the data is consolidated and standardized. It may not be the fun part for most persons, but what's really interesting and looks really fancy is the final stage, analytics and visualization. And this is the stage that most organizations in our region are familiar with. We essentially query the data and we format it into BI dashboards, predictive models, and of course, actionable insights.
Okay.
Shree, this conversation is supposed to talk about observed issues as well. And one of my observations is that a lot of organizations start at that final stage, analytics and visualization. So they start with a dashboard, or they start with the AI tool, or with the platform that has the analytical features, and then they try to see what they can get out of it. But the
Yeah.
correct starting point is actually data strategy. You mentioned that earlier. They really should be asking questions like, what does the growth mean for us as an organization, and what decisions do we actually need to make? And the thing is, normally when you start a strategic conversation, you naturally end up talking about the other elements of foundation, the governance, the architecture, the data quality, the integration, the analytics, and the visualization. And A lot of organizations are skipping that and going straight into an investment conversation around a BI tool or an AI tool. And then, of course, they end up with features, but not necessarily a proper data environment. And for those of us who have worked with a data analytics tool versus a data environment, you know that a tool can help, but a tool is not the whole foundation or it's not the full foundation. You need a
Mhm.
data environment. And now more than ever, data governance has to be part of the conversation. In Jamaica, for example, the Data Protection Act has caused many organizations to pay attention to how personal data is handled, and organizations that are data controllers have had to think more seriously about things like access, consent,
Yeah.
security, and accountability. And more support and understanding, I think, is still needed about what it actually means to govern data in practice. And the responsibility in a lot of cases is sitting with data protection officers or compliance officers or the IT department, which should not be the case. And don't get me wrong, those rules are, of course, important, but data governance touches the whole organization. It touches the business users, the managers, the analysts, the operations teams, the finance teams, HR, and
Yeah.
all everybody that interacts with the data in some way. So to really sum up my answer to this question, which has really been a long one, I think governance is one of those areas where we see movement, especially because of the data protection requirements. But governance, I think, has to connect with the rest of the foundation because it can't just sit separately from BI or analytics or reporting or operations. And that is where some organizations are currently struggling.
That's I definitely echo whatever you said, Meckala. I loved your answer. It was a answer packed with a lot of information. So I'm going to try to just
Right.
decouplize some of the information. I love how we started off with just saying organizations don't have a data problem today. They all have enough data. Years ago, that was a problem. Are we getting data from this system? Are we getting data from that system? But today, that's not the issue. You mentioned it. They have enough data. The issue is how do they make sense of that data? And I love the I think it's a six-stage framework that you mentioned that you have put in place on how
Right.
they can go from now you have this data, you have this terabytes and petabytes of data. How can we actually make it meaningful for your organization? Let's start using this six-stage framework to actually make it meaningful for your organization. Few things you mentioned on that. I'm a strong advocate for data governance as well. The data governance needs to be the first thing that you need to keep in mind before you actually do anything with your data. Many organizations that we end up working with, they have the same idea. I say that don't run before you can walk, and everyone wants to do the fancy things first. Let's visualize everything. Let's see how beautiful it looks. But well, if your foundation is not right, probably it's not going to help you. And AI is going to just exponentially get to a place where it will give you wrong answers faster if you don't have the foundations right. So let's unpack a little bit about a few things on the governance side that you mentioned. What what do you think is a challenge? You mentioned something about the legacy systems that the Jamaican organizations are trying to convert. Is that the common data challenge that you see across your clients or across a few companies that you're working? If you had to tell me one regional challenge or a common challenge that you come across, what would that be?
I think that it's a common challenge specifically in the public sector or in government institutions. And what is happening is, as you said before, they have a lot of data, but the data is not necessarily clean, or updates would have been made to certain systems over time. And because certain things weren't taken into consideration in terms of interoperability,
Yeah.
further down the line when they're now looking to move to a more efficient system or way of working, then they come upon those challenges. I think that's the main issue I've been seeing in the public sector so far.
Okay. So data not being consistent across, it could be because of multiples. They're using different legacy systems, and those legacy
Right.
systems don't end up talking with each other. So your recommendation is set that foundation first, actually clean your data, probably get the data uniformed or combined into one single data set before you start doing anything meaningful out of it.
Right. And the thing is, when it comes down to noticing the problem, is you don't normally realize that you have a plumbing issue until there's a leak. And based on the conversations I've had with teams, those leaks show up when the dashboard can't be trusted, or the two departments have different numbers for the same things, or when a report takes too long to prepare, or you look at a data set and you see that it's a final version, but you look in another department at the same data set and you see a different version, or when an AI model gives them a wrong answer with confidence.
I
So,
That
yeah,
is so true, and I love how you started off. You don't know plumbing issue until there is a leak. A nice quote to keep it somewhere for all those listeners. And I've come across that situation so many times. We end up working with clients, and they're like, "I want to see the revenue of your organization." Revenue for the finance team could mean one number. A revenue for the sales team ends up being a different number, and the revenue for the marketing team ends up being different number. So there is a issue where the revenue has such a simple metrics is not defined, and every team interprets revenue has a different number, different metric, and there's no consistency. So I'm glad you're mentioning that you want to address that particular issue as we get into this market. So let's try to get into the main theme of today's discussion was really foundations before AI. Probably we can start off with a more basic question. Do you see organizations moving towards AI in the Caribbean market today?
you said, how do I see them or do I
Do
see
you
them?
see them moving towards AI? Is the Caribbean
Yes, I
market
do.
already adopting AI? Where do they stand compared to the North American market? What's their pace? Yeah, I would love to know more about the Caribbean market.
Right. In terms of a comparison, I want to use Jamaica as an example, right? So Jamaica recently completed the UNESCO AI Readiness Assessment. And one of the things that stood out to me is the difference between the digital access indicators and the data infrastructure readiness. And that's because in the assessment, we would have scored high on indicators like electricity, and things like internet use. But when it came on to data infrastructure, the score was 45 out of 100. And I believe that the benchmark for Latin America and the Caribbean is around 59. So, from a data perspective, and based on my observations in the field, what that is telling me is that our region is highly engaged digitally. They are aware of the different AI tools, and approaches are being shared openly on LinkedIn via blogs, articles, and so on about what you can incorporate and possibly how you can incorporate it. But in terms of maturity or how far ahead we are, I do not think that we are at the mature state of adoption for the reason I stated earlier regarding the data infrastructure. The data infrastructure, especially for government in public institutions, it's not there. And similarly, there is a report that the Caribbean AI Task Force published, I believe, in December 2025. And if you look in their data infrastructure section, one thing that they said is that progress is limited by things like data sovereignty and data infrastructure. So I believe that underscores what I mentioned earlier.
Okay, that makes complete sense. So you're saying there's definitely a desire in the market to adopt to
Right.
AI,
The interest
and
is there. It's
interest is there.
exciting.
I think it's exciting for everyone. Everyone wants to adopt AI, and it's there is an interest in the market. but you don't have the right infrastructure set up, and it's
Right.
not ready yet to actually do that. And I want to counter that with what the North American market is. I think they have a similar challenge as well. There is a challenge of I wouldn't say necessarily data infrastructure as such, but data, having clean data, having the right data, probably that is the challenge. But the North American market is a little bit ahead in terms of saying we want to implement the AI. They're already trying AI. A lot of pilots are happening across different organizations, public sector, private sector, but they stop at pilot. They never go into production. And that's another challenge, which I'm sure Jamaica or the Caribbean markets is also going to get into as they actually start doing pilots. A lot of pilots, a lot of desires. Let's do this, let's do that, let's implement that. But has they actually try to do something meaningful out of it, um, it just stops at a pilot phase. So maybe that's another issue that the Caribbean market might end up having as well. Let's Of the infrastructure challenge that you mentioned, what what do you think a company like Datanomi could offer to help with that infrastructure challenge? If there were some tools or some solutions that you had to tell, what could those be?
Well, our service areas or solution areas really span four different categories. There is data foundation. So what we're able to do is provide support for how the data is collected, and how organizations go about organizing and cleaning it, which is not necessarily the fun part of the work for organizations. So they may not necessarily want to do that internally, or they may not have the capacity to do so internally or the time to do so internally. So that's something that we assist with as well. We help with structuring the data and, of course, preparing it for use. There is also the reporting and BI area. So when teams do get to that stage, we're able to assist them with preparing dashboards, um, not information displays, but dashboards with the right number of charts, with the right amount of information that you can query that can give you the answer that you actually need. We are also able to provide things like automated reports and alerts based on different KPIs that needs to be monitored across departments or different locations. And I think when it comes down to business intelligence support, we're able to work towards a customized solution for clearer visibility or better decisions, depending on, of course, what growth looks like for that organization. We, of course, support governance and readiness. So we're hands on when it comes on to providing that practical support for responsible data use. We have training sessions, and from time to time, we also have workshops regarding compliance readiness. And we support teams with automation and just bearing in mind how they're supposed to get ready for digital transformation.
Yeah.
That's particularly important for the teams that have achieved digitalization, but they're not at the digital transformation stage as yet. Um, I actually mentioned workshops and private training sessions. That's actually part of the fourth service or solutions area, training and adoption. So one of our biggest targets is to ensure that teams are not only investing in a solution that sits on the shelf, or as you mentioned, that they start a pilot that does not go anywhere. We ensure that they actually understand how to use and manage any solutions that we develop going forward.
Okay. So if I have to, I think, summarize the offering, or the key point is, yes, absolutely, AI is the next phase. You want to adopt to AI, but don't adopt to AI until you get the foundation right. And
Right.
your foundation can only be right if you actually end up working with the right people who understand data, who understand what data strategy looks like, who understand what governance looks like. You need someone to help you define the backend piece of the data, the backbone of the data. Let that foundation be defined in the right way. And sure, then you start using AI so that if someone is asking using Claude what is my revenue, you get the same consistent answer. Not that you get 100,000 today and you ask the same question tomorrow, you get a completely different revenue, because every time you're asking it, it thinks that the revenue is a different number. So I hear that piece, and I echo that as well. Let's set the right foundation. Let's define the layer that is required. Let's clean the data and get that ready for the next AI phase. What what do you think in the next 3 to 5 years? How does the Jamaican or the Caribbean ecosystem looks like? I'll tell you the reasoning behind this question. We've spoken about this years ago when we started creating a lot of data. We used to say, yes, create a lot of data, but get your data corrected, get your data clean. And we still have the same issue. We go today, we're saying the same thing: get your data clean, otherwise, AI is not going to give you the right answers. What do you think, or how do you see the next 3 to 5 years of the Caribbean ecosystem changing?
I think that we will see changes in specific sectors where better data quality changes the quality of recurring decisions. What do I mean by that? I think that we're going to be seeing significant changes in sectors like the public sector, um, digital government, tourism and hospitality, finance, insurance, health, and of course, agriculture and education. Education is important because it cuts through the skills pipeline for every other sector. So I am aware that for the public sector and for digital government, there's an opportunity there for service delivery. So I think that there is a data opportunity, and that data opportunity is not just putting a form online, it's building the data sharing and governance structure that allows services to work better. I think that within a year or two, most governments will have that implemented. And that's why the Jamaica Data Exchange platform is a useful example. Um, the value is not just in putting together a platform just to say that it exists. The value is moving from data silos to data sharing. I think that's something that we're going to be seeing in the government or the public sector in a few years from now. And for private companies, I think that customer service is going to change drastically. Right now, departments inside a company can behave like separate agencies. So we've been saying that sales has one view, finance has another, operations has another. And I think that we're going to find ways of simplifying that view. And as a result of that, we'll be able to derive more meaningful insights from our data. Tourism as another major opportunity. We can see drastical changes if we made that shift from just monitoring things like bookings, number of visitors, and stuff like that, to understanding how the visitor economy behaves and how the pieces connect. And for finance and insurance, I think that there's an opportunity not only for banks and insurers, but even for smaller businesses in terms of digital payments, and those are creating data trails. I think that if those that data, payment data, is connected to things like inventory, customer records, accounting, and sales activity, that will become more useful over time. And regarding health, I'm seeing a lot of persons that are getting excited about AI in healthcare, and there are good reasons for that. I think that we're going to see more of predictive care. But again, before predictive care, things like AI triage or advanced health analytics, I think that there are some basic questions around the data protection, the data quality, and the interoperability, and the resource planning that needs to be answered. I think they will be answered in a few years' time. I will be seeing more changes in that industry. And lastly, when it comes on to agriculture, I think that farm to table needs more data between the farm and the table. I think that we're also getting there. And as I said, the opportunity is not just only industry by industry, it's also skills based. I think the region is going to have more persons who can work with data properly. And not everyone needs to become a data scientist. They just need to be able to understand how the data is captured, how it's interpreted, how it's questioned, how it's protected, and how it's used.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There's a lot of opportunity. You said it for different sectors, different industries. What are the different opportunities? I've always wondered somehow healthcare always is the pioneer in adoption of newer technologies and AI as well. I don't see it any differently for the North American market as well. The if you had to see which industry has adopted AI the fastest and most successful, it is a healthcare industry today who has actually adopted it. I like how you said that use AI for triaging, use AI for not necessarily just predictive analytics or prediction, but there's a lot of local uses that could happen that could be implemented quickly. So there's definitely an opportunity that is existing in the market. And if I have to summarize what you said, I think clear processes, governance, and skills and leadership would be required to actually make this adoption successful. You also mentioned a little bit about the Jamaican Data Exchange. I'm not familiar with that term. Could you tell me a little bit about what that is? Yeah.
Sure. It's a platform that our government recently launched. It will essentially allow different systems in public institutions to talk to each other. So the Caribbean is catching up with the rest of the world when it comes on to being able to digitize certain systems, and that's because for some time our processes have been manual, and again, this it's not easy for systems to share information with each other. And as a result of that, for some time now, Shree, we when we go to different public institutions, we have to be going through the same process or presenting the same documents. It is or has been taking up a lot of time and of course resources. And just to move away from that and to become more efficient, that platform was developed just to ensure that information sharing can be facilitated between the institutions in the public sector, and it will also benefit the private sector. For example, if you're supposed to open a bank account and there are certain basic details that you need, because that would already be attached to your ID, or in your case your social security number. It will be easier for you to be processed through certain steps versus to be going through that manual process that we have been trying to move away from for years. So that's a huge development that I'm looking forward to see how that plays out.
That's and I guess that goes back to your initial thought, setting up the right data infrastructure, and looks like the Caribbean, the Jamaican government is definitely taking a lot of actions, a lot of policies in place to get that set up right. So
Right.
the next 5 years, next 3 to 5 years look quite interesting, and I'm glad that you're a strong advocate of that. You have the skills, you have the knowledge in this industry. So hopefully you can help the organizations who are trying to do that as well. I know on our previous conversations, I do want to end up with this last question. You mentioned something about Vision 2030. Was it Vision 2030 or something else that you mentioned about the government? If you were to talk about that, is that a good forum to talk or?
What I can say, just to sum it up, is that we're moving towards being smart. Smart in different areas, smart processes, smart systems, and based on the nature of that, you would imagine that technology plays a huge role in terms of how quickly we get to that vision and how efficiently we also do the same. So it's for that reason we have been active in conversations regarding things like AI, because it's going to play a huge role in how, for example, the government delivers services. And of course, there's a huge benefit for the private sector not just in terms of efficiency, but in terms of different services and products that it can create for consumers. That essentially sums up,
Yeah.
without saying a lot at the time, that we have about Vision 2030.
Oh, that's a lot that we unpacked today. I think we went from setting up the right foundations. What are the six frameworks that you could use? There was a practical giveaway to the listeners that we had today. So thank you again, Michaela, for sharing your experience, your perspective. I encourage everyone watching this or listening to this particular topic to connect with Michaela on LinkedIn or follow Datanomi and continue the conversation with her. Thank you, everyone who has joined, and thanks for being part of the discussion, Michaela. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shree. Me too.
Thank you.